story so far. Each of the four players started to set up their track. They're beginning to run. Nobody's run into a complete screw up, although Red got knocked out of their nickel that they were planning on delivering. This could have been much worse. We're able to deliver some other things and run back up and get it. It can be a really, really painful situation when the counter mix of commodities gets wiped out by other people. And it kind of made sense. Was it nickel? Yeah. And let's take a look at our different lines. So green was the first player, and they built kind of a central line coming through here. That's actually a pretty nice setup. Sort of a spider web type thing starting to grow out of there. It may or may not connect up. It's expensive to cross the Mississippi more than once, and they're already doing it 2 times. So technically more, but so trying to connect up here would probably be unwise, but maybe some kind of broad loop would be of some value. Because they have to hook up Atlanta anyway, and then this starts getting closer, you know. Blue player. So they started out with this very expensive track here and didn't do the most economical situation. Now their track is actually split. They make it up here near Minneapolis, and they're going to be heading down that way. They just set that up. But otherwise, they're only connected by this black track that they ran on. Eventually, they'll have to fix that. You can't win the game unless you have the cities all connected. You can't just have track coming out of 5 different cities. The red player, I already talked about them. They had a nice run set up initially, heading south, but they ended up having to go down without a load and then head back up and get that load. They had some middling stuff, some tourists they had to pick up, and they had to set up some stupid stuff, carrying machinery cogs up to Savannah and somewhere else, like New York or Washington, somewhere not particularly valuable, but burn some cards that that didn't work, given that I had to run back up here. And finally, the black player has, and this is a nice eastern route, but it doesn't really portend of anything long range. It gives them good coverage in the east. The black player was running goods from up here, agricultural stuff, down to Toronto and New York. And I don't know what the hell they're doing. I'm going to step back a little bit and, kind of catch up with when I make a decision and not just focus so much, certainly not on everybody's move and, most annoyingly, me trying to figure out where they're actually going, which has to happen every damn turn when I'm playing solo. Blue's setup was they're going to run to Dallas, and then they have runs which could have been either pigs to Savannah, which I don't have enough train to do both because I'm hauling the nickel, or corn to Miami. As it sits, I counted out my money after I reached Dallas, and I have just about enough to make it to Miami. And I'm okay. I have like $1 or $2 extra. So I'm going to do that one instead of the cheaper piggies. I don't know what I'm going to do with this card. I could eventually run pigs from St. Louis down to Savannah, but it's not a great run. It's a great card if I do tourists to Los Angeles, though. So if I get some synergy for that, that would be fantastic. I have a whole shitload of stuff they're delivering, and they haven't built a lot of track because of that. They got $20. I'm gonna try to make up for some of my problems by spending that. I got more than $20, but by spending that $20 and getting myself a fast freight to bring that nickel down to Jacksonville. And then the other thing, is I may be hauling iron up to Portland. There's iron in Birmingham. I don't have enough cash to claim Birmingham if I buy the 12 train, but you know, I can pay somebody $4 to get in and out. Fucked up with black. Savannah needing coal, I started building this stuff. That's not going to work. This is iron. There's coal in Cincinnati, but I don't know where. I don't know where I'm coming from. This is one of the problems. Did I do a death march to, like, was I heading this way or was I heading out of New York? I don't know the answer to that. I think I'm heading this way. You're not allowed to turn around. You are if you have a circle. You could build one, and I've seen people do shit like that. That's putting me in a real problem here. So now that's making other options more attractive. I have basically enough money to make that Birmingham to Savannah run. And I don't have enough to hook myself up to the coal. I fucked up. That's part of this game. So I think I just have to go get my tobacco and haul it up to Fargo. And that's this card. And I think that's the best I can do after I fucked up. Oops. Stop and start because of me coming in, because there's often interesting stuff happening. So green's just passing on their way. But blue, with the 9 train, could only make it one space away from Dallas. What that would mean is if I'm going to Miami, I'm going to waste a lot of my next turn. So I spent the remaining $4 building this track. Now there's some risk to that. Maybe the card I draw in Dallas convinces me to go in a different direction or whatever. And this could be money that I need somewhere else because of that. There are often circumstances where you made a judgment that turned out to be a bad one if you had known the future. Then there are cases where you just fuck up and do what the black player did. Those are fairly rare, but yeah, I just wasn't paying attention because this and this don't look all that different. Coming around the other way, green ends up making their delivery to Pittsburgh, getting a pile of cash. Not sure what I want to do with it. Not at all sure I want to spend. I've got over $20. I could buy a fast train or whatever. Oh, let me get some I-beams. Which are steel, even though they start with an I. Once I get to Buffalo, I'm going to know a whole hell of a lot more. Now, I might want to do something silly like spend $1 to hook the red space here. That doesn't deny a second player access to Buffalo through any possible route, but it gets me access to the red route if I wanted it, stuff like that. If I really need to go to New York, I can take the black route down here. So, you know, not really that big a deal either way. But I drew a shitty card. So I've got my Buffalo lead. I think this is the card I drew. Uranium, well, I don't really get too close to uranium anywhere, I don't think. Regina, Santa Fe. Santa Fe, I'm kind of close. But it's in the wrong direction. I want to haul stuff this way, right? Wheat to Tampa, well, wheat is kind of, you know, I mean, I could go get some, but it's also not worth a hell of a lot. And coal to Calgary, well, I'm really near coal. Calgary's a long way away. Should be a great run, right? Now, it's only $14 because there's coal over here somewhere. In Salt Lake City and in Duluth. Oh, Duluth has both the coal and the iron. So, you know. Yeah. Anyway, just lucked into something. Let's get rid of this nickel. That works rather well for them. Oh, well, the nickel was worn out again. Here in Dallas, and I could pick up cotton and bring it to Minneapolis. And that's actually not bad. It's a decent run. What is my other thing? I was going to bring corn to Miami. I have enough money to do that. Or I could haul the cotton up to Minneapolis. I'm not sure which way to go. So I just drew this card and I'm like, oh, Atlanta swine, Savannah swine, they're right next to each other. I could do that delivery. But I forgot that I have the corn on board. Which makes things a little bit more complicated. Because then I could carry both the pigs and... So I could do the cotton, and then I could carry the pigs and the corn down south. I probably want to go to Minneapolis, at some point or another. My track's disconnected, but that may make the most sense. What makes sense is that I wouldn't be using all my movement points heading this way anyway. So now I'm using everything going up this way. I make that delivery to Minneapolis, cost me $3 to build the track. And I get rid of that. And then I have the Savannah and the Miami to deliver at once. I also get another card. I have more cash on hand to make decisions with. Turns out I haven't decided if I'm using that yet, but you know. And could actually, no, I had to build track. Couldn't build the train. I would need to. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I could withhold on the track, take my $3 back, and get a faster train. But this excess of cash gives me an opportunity if I get something that's taking me to Los Angeles instead. So, since I'm getting rid of this card, but these two are more iffy, I think it's not too bad a decision to hold off. Coming out of Jacksonville, $25 richer, and an interesting card. First of all, nice stuff to go out far west. However, I'm on the other side of the country and do not have the kind of money to make it out there unless there were stopping points along the way. So that's not going to work. But the other card is also kind of interesting, Miami wood, because I have this Portland, Maine for iron, and I have the Atlanta steel. So I'm going to just not move my full 12. I moved 1, 2, 3, I giving up 2 movement points. I'm going to hook Atlanta up and Birmingham. Oh, wait. Yeah, Birmingham has steel. Kind of hard to see there. And that way I can grab the iron and the steel, run it to Atlanta, get another card, see what happens. And then the iron up to Portland, and then the wood can come back down for Miami. Along with whatever other cards I have that work with it, which may or may not work. You know, I may not be doing it. Like here, where there's particularly valuable track and coming through here and maybe through the mountains here, this is also important track. And I may want to drop some cash down on building that early, even though I'm not going to be running right up there right away. So this is like not a bad expense, and it gets you Boston. There's also options. You can go through like 2 mountains to get to here. It's a couple extra bucks. It's, I think, a little bit cheaper, but it doesn't get you Boston. But it might be more effective for me because I've already got track on that side of New York. I don't know. What I had to do was one of the curiosities of this game. Since I needed to hook up Birmingham, and I did this, and I was kind of dicky. I ran the track straight to black and cut down. Remember, no cost for running into track. The junctions rule, which has confused me before in my life, seeing that statement of there's no extra cost for junctions under an optional rule makes me think that, oh, well, there would be normally. But I've come out of a city twice, so I couldn't build this track. So instead I blasted through this mountain. It's a little bit more expensive, but it grabs me the track right away before anybody else goes there. It was $20 exactly to run all of it together. This was $11. Down here was $9, and now I'm all set up. You know, maybe I paid $1 extra or something for some insurance that I don't end up paying $2 or $3 extra if somebody else wants to go there next turn. Stopped at Buffalo. They've got 5 movement points left. Picked up my machinery. I have a shitload of cash. Enough to do whatever I want. Like over $50, I think. I've got this run for Los Angeles bauxite. That might be worth doing. If I could get any synergy with it. I can go down, I connect to the bauxite already. I make it quite a ways out towards LA. Probably be better trying to run through this way rather than down into Arizona and whatnot. Just because there's at least cities somewhat near here that might be of value. But I look at my other cards. So uranium comes from nowhere near me. I mean, it would be a route back getting it to Washington. Again, good money. Wheat to Tampa, totally going in the wrong direction. I'd have to go quite a ways and then head down. So I'd be spending, you know, twice as much. Coal to Calgary, we've already discussed that. If it was on the way, yeah, sure. And then this one just doesn't do anything. Kansas City oats, that's just a garbage run, right? New Orleans corn, a little run, yeah, if you're in this general area, but again, and I would be with the bauxite, so yeah, maybe I can pick up some corn on the way. And then Omaha wants cotton. I mean, again, that's kind of on my way back up. I'd have to build a lot of track, which maybe I don't have enough to get to Los Angeles and do that kind of shit. But I think I could do the Kansas City oats garbage just to get rid of the card. What were we talking about? Did we have something for this one? This one? No, this one's the problem. This one is the problem. Corn to New Orleans, maybe. This card sucks. And then the other option would be head my next 5 movement points because I've got, you know, stuff from the East Coast on board and throw away a turn. Now, when you throw away a turn, you don't get to build track after you get your cards, though. So you're really kind of throwing away your movement for your turn and maybe your movement for the next turn unless your track gets you more or less to where you want to go. Now, green has the best track for doing this, really, because they kind of spread over into different areas of the board rather nicely. They're doing pretty well. This is a hard call. I usually don't like throwing my cards. I often get beaten by people who are more willing to throw cards. Just to build some track to Des Moines, second person in there, great, and run down to New Orleans and then come back out. You know, it develops track. It's very, very hard for me to just say, yeah, I might be losing a turn, 2 turns over. And you still might not get a great hand. You still might not get a hand that's any better than what I'm looking at here, right? That's completely possible. With green's track, it's unlikely maybe, but I don't know. It's early in the game. It's still very possible to get kind of crappy stuff, and Just shot over to Birmingham, grabbed out their iron and steel, moving to Atlanta. I don't think you have to actually land on the star, but it doesn't hurt me to do so. So again, rather than look things up. But this is one of those interesting cases where I'm getting rid of a card that cost me like $5 to build out to get $3 back, but just to get rid of a card that's not really helping me very much. We'll see what comes out of it. I hope I moved right. 1, 2, 3. Yeah. Okay. A lot of stuff going to where I am, and nothing too appealing. Billings. I mean, I'm not going out to Billings anytime soon by what these are looking like. Unfortunately, I have no opportunity to get an extra good in Atlanta. Black delivered their 19 run into Fargo. They got a strike. No train can pick up or deliver any load in any city within 3 mileposts of the Atlantic, the Pacific, or the Gulf of Mexico. Yeah. That might impact some people. So, for example, somebody's heading down to New Orleans, but I don't think they're going to be there anytime in the near future. Looks to me like that disaster is just going to live without a problem. More flood. No train can cross the Ohio, Missouri, Mississippi. All rail lines are destroyed over these rivers. This could wipe someone out. That something's destroyed, you erase it. No one goes over the Ohio. The Missouri, everybody's going through Kansas City. But up here, we got a couple. That are disjointed as well. And you can't build track over them until after his next turn. This could trap some people, you know, like green heading this way. Not so much now. Given that this is broken, and I won't be able to build it this turn, and I won't be able to build it next turn, anything using this part of my track is probably pretty iffy. There's going to be a high cost to it. And I drew this card, which has some shitty stuff on it, but it has swine to Winnipeg. Well, I'm not far from that, and I'm not far from swine, and I can build to them without crossing the river. Well, that's interesting. And then I get oats at Winnipeg. I can take them out to Vancouver, which I was playing with as an idea, but it's a long route, and I'll be the second guy going through it. But there's room for 2 people up here. Much more than that, it starts getting really crowded when you're going through the mountains. Yeah, I mean, you can blast through mountains. They're not that expensive, but you're paying twice the cost for each mountain. What about this card? Well, there's not much good here. Right now, it's kind of a waste in my hand, but maybe I go down and I get oil and bring it to New York or Tampa. Or if I'm going down there, maybe I'm delivering corn to Dallas. But I'd have to cross the river for that or make an expensive route. So we will build us some track to set up the Winnipeg route. And then can we make Vancouver on whatever we have? So I don't know, but we might be able to run here at $4 a turn. How wise is that? Not very, but we might be able to stretch out our run by doing that. And so even if I don't have quite enough money, I might be able to make some of it that way without discarding my cards. Of course, that gives money to blue, but whatever. That's not good. So Des Moines already has 2 people in it. And there's only 2 places that have piggies. The other one is St. Louis, and I can't really go there. Ugh. With a 9 train, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I could get back to here, so I could do it for $6, which is actually cheaper than it would cost me to build the track. pay back the favor to blue. And then what would I have? Well, I will deliver this for 14, so I'll make 8. So I'll be at about 30 coming out of Winnipeg. Can I make that on 30? I don't know, because this was like 40, I think. It doesn't look promising. Oh, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. Ooh, I don't know. I'm going to have to count that. Not on camera. Cheapest I can get to Winnipeg, from Winnipeg to Vancouver, is about 32. Not going to be able to afford it. However, I can get a lot of track getting me playing along with the blue track, unfortunately, getting me really close to Vancouver. And then when I hit Vancouver, I've got 20 bucks, which will get me out of there, right? In terms of like, I can build my track and hook it up if need be. I don't have any real guarantees yet what's going to happen. What about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 gets me to Des Moines. I only have a 9 train. Shit. Where's my die? Why? Should be over here, but I think I'm at 0. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 to here. So 2 bucks plus 4 bucks. I'll spend 6 bucks. Is this what I counted on? That means I'll have 8 left, right, from Winnipeg. Yeah, I'm gonna do that. Maybe I draw a better card, something that helps me get out there, or maybe gets me out in a different direction or something. But it seems like it's the only real option I have with the cards I drew, and with the river crossings, my track is really pretty much cut off from me. Thinking I would stop about now. Uh-oh. My battery is not charging. I was thinking I would stop about now, but with these disasters out and the complexity of some of the decisions that have to be made, I think I have to play a couple more rounds around. How green was considering, hey, do I want to throw my cards? Well, I'm kind of deprived of a turn anyhow. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I can move 9 spaces. I won't be allowed to build any new track. Now, I was going to haul stuff down to New Orleans, and I built the track for it. This is the, I'm not sure I want to do that. I want to negate this. If I throw my cards, I do not get a turn at all. But which means no building or anything, which means I can move to here, or wherever I need to go after getting rid of them. Given that the river crossings are broken and I still have a fistful of cash, I am indeed going to throw them. Now, throwing your cards is a way to cause disasters because you're drawing more. And after somebody pulls a new hand like this, they're done. They will spend the time with other players' turns taking a look at them and trying to figure out what they can do. I'm going to tilt all these so that I kind of know that I'm in a weird chaotic position right now. It's not badly impacted by this situation. They ran to Minneapolis, made their drop-off, and started on their way down to Miami with that corn, and I will be going to Savannah with the swine. I may want to build the track to Savannah. There's already 2 people going in there, so a third person is the last person who can go in, because it's a square city. This card doesn't look terribly useful to me right now. Maybe Buffalo Tobacco. If I'm in this area, picking up New York seems like a pretty good idea. Sometimes, so the real question is, what are your 5 cities out of 6? Now, you can connect all 6, and sometimes you feel like you have to because you make money. You know, you break out even on a run, but you get lots of extra track that's going to be useful to you. But in general, you want to be as parsimonious as possible in terms of the track that you lay. You know, I mean, your ideal situation is to build track like Green has, and to hit exactly 5 cities, not hit a lot of other stuff, not have a lot of spurs and stuff, but it's hard to make your 250 million or whatever doing that. So, you know, anyway. Yeah. Plus, it'll speed up my movement. You know, I'll have an extra city I can come out of if I build it now. Tracks in yet another piece, but that's okay. By coming down here, I'm getting closer to Miami. Now, if somebody else, if 2 other people jump into Miami, or if even 1 does, I may just ride them, because Miami, I may get close, but going all the way to Miami is an expense, right? And let's say I get down in the Tampa area, it's still $125. It only costs $4 to ride somebody if you bounce in and out. Of course, with a 9 train, that may be harder than with a 12. To Des Moines to get my piggies for Winnipeg. Getting really sloppy with the tokens. You know, this happens even playing opposed, where people forget to grab their goods and whatnot. It can really cause problems. I'm usually not that bad, but I am when I'm playing solo. But I tried to pay green for riding blue's track, which wasn't going to work. You know, isn't really legitimate. After black goes, these 2 go away. And now everybody can build, but they wouldn't have been able to. So I want to see what happens with Winnipeg, what I draw. I haven't gotten rid of any cards here. I'll go one more time around because people have their opportunity to connect up. They may not. A lot of times people leave things unconnected for long periods of the game. Because, you know, you don't, in this early part of the game, you don't want to build that track. Plus, since I use the tax card as a reshuffle, what it means is that the rivers can flood again and again, global warming and all, and therefore, you know, you can't really predict, yeah, I'll be safe for a long time, I might as well pay. You might as well wait until you need the track, either to win the game, or more likely because you're making a big run across. But, you know, green may not need both of these. In the long run, maybe they'll hook up a different way and, you know, not buy that extra piece of track or whatever. Decides to pick up coal, actual coal, in Cincinnati and haul it to Kansas City. It's only $11. It's getting rid of one of their options, which is oh no, wrong one. Do I have cogs on board? Oh shit, man. I'm in great shape. Yeah. I'm going to haul both of them, the coal and the cogs, to Kansas City. It does get rid of one of my opportunities, which is wheat to Portland, which is kind of appealing. But, you know, it just doesn't seem worth it until I see more cards that might fit with it. $20 is a lot, even though I want to go up this way. Hey, maybe I don't need to get Seattle. Maybe I'll go to Los Angeles instead and screw Seattle and that whole area of the board, because it's expensive to hook these 2 up. Whereas this area is rich in cities, which is one of the reasons why blue starting out there is kind of iffy. But honestly, your cards direct you as to what you want to do. And eventually you need to hook up one of these two, even if you're all on the east. And conceivably, New York can get kind of difficult to get to. Even in 4 players, it can get kind of a little harsh to get in there. Blue didn't have to build track because they're crossing a Kansas City. So now that the disaster's gone, those bridges are, reconstructed without me having to spend a turn on it. And I shoot my way down, then hook up to Atlanta. I'm not going to shoot my way down to Miami yet. We'll see how close I get to Savannah. It might be nicer to be able to bounce out, land someplace like here or whatever, and know what my cards are before I make that decision. Again, I'm not that concerned with making my way down all the way to Miami, and the terrain there is just peachy. Okay, so I am putting crayons on each of the runs that I'm in the midst of making. That'll help remind me. This is it for tonight. I've spent most of the day playing my damn video game, and I gotta play it again now. Yeah, it's on this. Basically, at the time I was gonna go up, it was like 5 minutes before an event started. It's ruling my fucking life, but something's got to, right? And with me not really working, and spending a few hours a week looking for work, but that's it. I should be studying something or prepping, but I just can't convince myself that I want to work all that hard. It's kind of I made my way to this point already in life, and most of the jobs that are available are more related, in my field, contain a significant portion of pen testing in addition to any code review and architectural analysis. And it's been a long time, like over a decade, since I've done any pen testing. I'm always, right up front telling them that, look, I've been doing pure code review for a decade. I've done the other stuff. Maybe I could, I assume I can pick it up again, but I'm not going to be at the top of my game on that. And, as opposed to everybody else who kind of tries to inflate things. But it's not just because I'm not sure I want to work. It's also, there's just this weird strain of honesty in me. I'm going to play a couple of turns, then probably have a beer, and then waste the rest of my evening, because I woke up at like 2 and wasted what little day that I've had on my computer. Getting back on that because it just keeps drawing me in. But I figured I'd push through a little bit of this, finding it easier to do than some other things. So I come back, and these crayons are really helpful putting them in location. By the way, these are not standard crayons. If you find a copy of this that doesn't have crayons, do not just go out and get Crayolas. They won't erase properly at all. They're basically like China markers, the same kind of material with color. And you can buy those. Those work really, really well. Sometimes it's hard to find more than a couple of colors of China markers, though. So another option is dry erase markers, which also work perfectly fine. But and do not use a pen, obviously. Okay, so green is in this kind of interesting position, and I moved their train. It's time for the build. I've got a pair of little runs going into Kansas City, which add up to a medium run. Like, it's 2 $10 runs, $20, and I basically didn't have to build anything. And this is the kind of thing that falls on you once you get into this middle game and later. And then I've got this card. This card is not a great card, but I can see what I could do. I could haul oil up to Chicago. Here's the question. Do I want to hook that up? Well, there's a compromise solution. I could either pay, hook it all up, and then not use it if I get different cards and curse myself. Or I could look at this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I could spend like $3 getting me down towards the oil, getting me some track out of Kansas City, maybe allowing me to build things at other times. I think it's worth it. Maybe not to spend all 3, but I have plenty of cash. So I'm going to actually do this 1, 2, 3, and just build this little spur coming out. These kind of things, you know, if I waste it, I didn't waste much, and not wasting movement is kind of a big deal. And there's a fairly good chance I'll eventually want to go down in that direction. I'm creating this kind of, not spider web, but spider-shaped track hub coming out of Kansas City, which is, again, I think it's a really cool shape. You don't always develop this, and some people then, you know, you get a run from Houston to New Orleans, and you're like, well, you spend the money to hook it up, and then you end up with loops and stuff like that, which defeats the parsimony of the setup, but whatever. They made their $21 to Portland. They'll pick up their wood. They made the move they wanted to make, right? They've got 8 movement points left. Here's the problem. If I was carrying an extra iron, no, I don't think I could, because I came out of here and I had to drop something off in Savannah. But yeah, if I was carrying an extra iron, I could just head over to Toronto and make another 15 off that. This card doesn't really help me too much otherwise. I've got fish to Sudbury. I got fish here, I got Sudbury here. It's not a great run. If I gotta go up there, sure, but... And then I've got copper to Detroit, and copper is just, you know, way out west. Look to see where. Phoenix and Portland. So this is a shitty card. I got 2 copper cards. You know, if I can find a way out there, it makes sense. But it's a nice synergy, but I gotta get out there to make it work. Anyway, I got my Wood to Miami card. The other option would be to make this big old run with corn to Los Angeles. That takes me right by copper. Or cotton to San Francisco, which is even richer, which brings me out there. Now, instead of getting copper, I could get the sugar for Atlanta. You know, that's actually beginning to look like it might go together better than this 24 wood that I don't have a return trip on. Let me think. I'm thinking as I look at my money, and all I got is $29. That doesn't sound possible, but one can be tricky. I got 8 movement. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Next turn, well, I would have to drive down this way to get my cotton. But at some point I could come from here and run 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. That's 1. I wish I were on green, but I can't really take advantage. I don't junction with green directly. I could do it in Buffalo, but then their route's not very good. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Okay. So for $12, I think, call it 16 if I screw up, maybe get a disaster or something, I can make it to Denver without building any track. That's a lot of money to spend without building track. It's generally not a good idea. Generally, you want to build your track network. But let's keep thinking. I don't think I can make it to here on 13 bucks. So it's not possible. But sometimes there is a reasonable solution to build your way and just have, just like Blue did up here where they have segmented track, but have massive difference, separation of your track, that you're going to pay a huge amount of money to hook that back up. But you need to do it eventually anyway. And you kind of are borrowing money, in a sense, by running someone else's track. You're paying a higher cost in the long run, but it may get you under your trunk. Unfortunately, I think I have to make that Miami run. And I have 8. 1, 2, 3. Now, I don't really want imports with me. Fishies. Oh, wow, I could take Fishies to Sudbury. Just get rid of this card. I didn't realize I get fish at Boston. Yeah, let's do that instead. Now, sometimes when you're playing, you catch these things after your turn, and that's not, kosher, right? Like, if you fuck up, you fuck up. Just, I had that in another one. Now, with new players or whatever, if you want to be really friendly, maybe a little bit. Sometimes there's things like, oh shit, I don't have enough money, I thought I could do this, and it would ruin their whole game. And that's a different matter than like, not making this run and holding a card when you're in a perfectly fine situation. You know what I mean. So, I know I talked about this last night, was Black using Blue's track in just that sort of way to get themselves out to Vancouver. And I got a card that works well with that, which is Wheat, which I pick up also at Winnipeg, to San Diego. So I could use my money to build track down to here and then, figure out my way of connecting my track later. I might still do that, but I viewed something that was kind of interesting, which is, I was thinking about running all the way to Vancouver, but instead, there's kind of a nice path of track that runs down here. It left me only $3 when I get to Seattle, which is $1 fucking dollar short of the money I would need to run into Vancouver. Now, the big question is, if I did run that, I'd only have $20 to get me to San Diego, and I'm not convinced that I could get to San Diego on $20. No one goes there. And that would have been the next step to look at. I'm going to look to see if there's some sort of shortcut where I can maybe build some of the track and hook up and do this. But this is a hard problem. And this is what I don't like about the game, right? I mean, to some extent I do, but it feels like it would be easier on a computer where the computer would just calculate your cheapest cost to get to someplace, for you. And then you could look at those and make your decision making rather than having to do all this counting and really mental mechanical crap is what I call it. I really dislike that kind of thing. I like being given, options that I can clearly identify and understand. Of course, the computer might not figure out all the possible routes, and then when you get to that, you'd have to be counting anyway. But it would be pretty easy to optimize, hey, how far could, what's my best, cheapest route for track and everything? That could be done instantaneously. I can make the run. The cheapest I can get there seems to be 26. And I'd be getting $20 back. And that doesn't get me out of Vancouver. I'd have to build my way out of it still. You might be able to up the cost a little bit there. So I would lose $6 of my current 30. Which means I'd have 24 to get to San Diego. Again, I don't know that I can do that, because the best path down is out of here. So I would be looking at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24. You know, I'm out of money. Yeah. So I'm just not going to have the kind of cash that I need to make this run. And I look at my hand and I'm like, there just isn't anything that really works here. I could haul rice to Regina. Looks like Regina to me, man. Doesn't sound as much like vagina that way either, which helps, especially when you combine Vancouver with it. And then I could haul oil up to New York, maybe. So rice comes from down here. Although my little track that I didn't use, I built going to Birmingham and boned everyone out of that. And then all this track down here, oh boy. All that track, and that's a real hose, gets me close to New Orleans, but it doesn't get me oil. And then I'd have to build hard to get to oil. Whereas, although it's going to be hard to get into Kansas City here, Kansas City starts getting real crowded, doesn't it? So I could come down this way, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's my cheapest route into Kansas City. It's definitely not direct. It's got a little jogging around and whatnot. But I have enough money to get me down to Houston and the oil. I said 6 for that. 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. So now I've got $10 left to connect this up to get the oil to New York. What's here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Well, let's do this differently. 1, 2, 3, 4, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. That would get me to Regina. And then I have enough to get to New York. It's not a bad run. Do I want to do this? Of course, I could do a cheaper run, the Corn to Dallas, which I can grab on the way down without any problem at Minneapolis, and then go down and hit Houston for my rice, and then maybe I'm ready to go to Vancouver. You know, plus that turns cards quicker. So this 24 New York doesn't really fit in all that well, whereas this kind of does. So let's go with that. I'm not thrilled about it. The other option would be to move down a little bit, throw some cards down and say, my track's good enough, I should be able to get somewhere. And I should, but my track's broken in places and stuff, so it's kind of tricky, and I would like to have some certainty. I never like throwing cards. Some of the track coming down. One thing, for those of you, I'm not giving a lot of playing here, doing a lot of talking, whatever. For those of you who might be interested in the fullness of that harsh rails type thing, I never wrote it up. I don't write shit down. You don't pay $20 to go from a 6.1. Well, you do from a 6.1 to a 9.2, but you could go to a 9.1 or a 6.2 for $10. So again, a little less harsh than maybe it first sounded, but it is a nasty, nasty game. And the idea of it is people are going bankrupt left and right until either they get a few lucky runs and they pay like $1 to run on their own track each turn, until they get a few lucky runs that let them survive, or maybe better, that they end up getting cards that work well with the track that people who have gone bankrupt have. Well, I always considered that maybe the bankrupted track should sell for less, right? Because if it's in receivership or whatever, it can usually be picked up for less. So I kind of wanted to play around with that. I don't think we ever did that. I think we always did, no, you could just buy that track. By making it less, it would make it disappear from the board more quickly, which I think is a really cool thing. Like, that track is too worthwhile for, it's too much of a bargain for people to leave lying around. So by being able to buy important slices of track for like half the price or whatever, that would be cool. What would be most important, it would be kind of neat though to have them sell by segments. Sets of you could only buy a set of track. It was almost like a private railroad or something. So like this set connects to Cincinnati, but it also connects to Pittsburgh, and it also connects to Buffalo, and you have to buy that whole thing at once, but you'd get it at like half price. And otherwise you'd have to work around it if you don't have that kind of cash. Things like that were ideas that kind of work. But this goes directly from Chicago to Sudbury. No extraneous track or whatever. The whole thing would just sell at half price. And, if you're going from Chicago to Sudbury, it's the best track there. So it's a great deal. The problem with it is, of course, trying to figure out what the cost of the track is. You could kind of say minimal cost that it would take to build that segment. But you'd have to be paying the cost to go into one of the cities. You could always come out of a big red city if that's there. But what do you do if you're talking about the cost between, I don't know, do we have something? I'm sure we do. The cost between Jacksonville and Tampa, you would be drawn. It was originally drawn with, coming out of one of those cities and going to the other. So I think you could pick one terminus and build from there or something like that. I don't know. I'm just spitballing ideas about something that really we never should have done. It was horrible, but it was beautiful at the same time. Landed in Kansas City. This is the first time we've seen this. It's someone dropping a double run at the same place. You can't drop them both at once. You got to do them one at a time, and that makes it somewhat important to decide which one goes where. They are exactly equal in terms of where I get them from. Coal and machinery both came from Cincinnati. So I'm going to sell the one that's a little bit more expensive. But sometimes you wouldn't do that. I mean, usually the cost is reflected by the distance that these things are. Not really sure. So looks to me like Birmingham and Knoxville may be a little bit more expensive. I'm not sure why this is $1 more. Cincinnati seems like it's the easiest route there, although I think actually maybe these are closer in net value. I don't know. They're both equally good, and this is direct from Atlanta to Kansas City, so yeah. So that's probably where it comes from. So that's going to be $11. I draw another card from that, and I do get something. All trains within 8 mileposts of Salt Lake City move at half rate. I don't think anybody's near there. No movement or rail building is allowed in the mountain mileposts of this area. That's going to last for a while. I keep drawing. I get another card, and now I don't see anything on here that says hold this other card. So I'm going to get 21 and then keep drawing, and I get another card. Then I'll figure out where I'm going to go with my 5 remaining movement points. I was intending to run down this track, pick up oil, and bring it up to Chicago. I might still do that. That's worth $13 million. I've got some of the track built for that. And here's the thing. I have tourists to Denver, which says, hey, stop at Chicago anyway. I was thinking I would just do this, turn around, go get the thing in Chicago. But you know what? The oil is on the way, or is part of this route. So I might as well turn that card over unless I can think of something better to do with it. Las Vegas Fish, I'm not near Fish, and Regina Copper. The Copper is in Phoenix and Portland, I think, only. Yeah, which is a little far away from my sort. I have the money to do it, but it's a little far away from sort of Denver. Because what I have is that tourists to Denver and then cattle to Boston going back. A nice run. Now, cattle is right here at Cheyenne, so I can grab that. And that, I think, works pretty well. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to here. I'll build my track probably just to Oklahoma City to get that oil. That's here. That'll be this set. Something, because actually Salt Lake City and Cheyenne are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 apart exactly, which means I couldn't build to Cheyenne, which I did, except it's only in the mountain mileposts that I'm restricted, so I can build in the winter near the mountains, just not into them. Off their fish, and they got themselves an opportunity. Oh, I gotta grab my Miami as well. An opportunity, which is Kansas City wants wood as well as Miami. Well, I can run up this way, so I started building some track. Not going to cross the river quite yet. You know, might flood again. Unlikely, but it might. But I also have to build track down to Miami as well. Something that happens is you know, I dumped something off, and now I got to go back to Portland and grab wood, and that's a couple of turns. Now I got a fast freight, so it's not that terrible. But you know, if you had the super freight, whatever it is, the Speed 12 three spot train, you have extra room and you fall into things occasionally. I usually don't justify that as a reason to spend the $20. Usually it's, I have a route on 3 cards that I can see 3 things I want to deliver. But, you know, it might be worth it just to speculate and throw the $20. The thing is, you don't need that. You don't need a heavier train to win the game. Yeah, you can win the game with a fast freight. If you ever go with the heavy freight or the super, well, if you ever go with the heavy freight, you want to upgrade to the super freight. You'll always want to upgrade to the fast freight because you will not win unless you have that 12 movement allowance through, you know, large parts of the game. That's a 33% increase. But anyway, all right, let's do one more and then I think it's time to break. It's kind of hard to decide what your excess baggage is going to be. In this case, I need corn for Dallas, but you know, I'm hauling oats. Everything's kind of near here that I'm hitting for, so it's probably not going to be some kind of big, I just fell into a big windfall like it is, you know. So one of the places where it's really useful to carry extra stuff from is, hey, if you're coming out of here, sugar, fruit, these things are hard to find. Sugar only comes from San Francisco. So if you're making a long run with sugar, well, there's a good chance that, like, you want to carry that sugar around as your ballast. And that's a reason, as long as you need ballast. Sometimes, you know, you're like, wow, do I want to give that sugar up because I'm, like, trying to trash a card that's worth only a couple of bucks? And the answer is always yes, but then you trash that card and a sugar delivery comes up right in your area and you're like, there's $30 down the drain, you know, that I could have just made, but you wouldn't have gotten the card if you didn't turn the cards over. So, you know, I mean, yeah, I guess you could discard your entire hand. All right, that's it for a little bit. There's a certain energy and whatnot to playing this and describing it. I don't know why. Maybe because I've played it so many damn times. It's kind of like the beginning of Talisman or whatever. It doesn't really get any worse either. The hard part of the game is over. You might fuck up and stuff, but it's not like... It does drag a little bit, but it's not... I put it in the same category. even though this is a decent game. I put it in the same category as Talisman because it was the same kind of thing. I played it for other people. But honestly, I didn't much mind this when I was just playing it to be around like my wife or whatever. I did mind it when I went to gaming, and this is what they fucking broke out, you know? I would feel just as lousy about Talisman or, yeah, let's play a bunch of, I don't know what the fuck, Medici or something. Yeah, it was the same kind of thing. It was like, why am I bothering to be here? This is stuff I don't mind playing, you know, to entertain myself and my woman, but you know, and if it's a way of including, you know, people I wouldn't normally game with, but I don't want to go to my gaming group and this is what there is. On the other hand, I didn't mind, like, sometimes I would stop by my buddy Tom's house, you know, just to say hi or whatever, see what was going on. And if they were doing something like, going to do something like this or Catan or whatever, I would join in. That's a different circumstance, right? It's like, it's the idea that already having planned that we had like a weekly gaming night, day or whatever, and something like this would roll out and eat up the entire time and be miserable. But of course, you know, the things I liked made him miserable too. So for a while, there was a reasonable balance between what kind of things we did. But then it just became more and more, you know, maybe he evaluated his situation and was like, man, this is what I think came about. You know, it was like, well, if you're going to play something I don't like, I am not going to play. And that became oh great, you know, we decided on something based on 4 or 5 players being present, and now that decision no longer works. And I think we actually played something that he would have liked after he'd left because it was the best option for the smaller number of players, but whatever. It may not have even worked with the amount of players that would have been included otherwise. So down to play, and I had a kind of pleasant surprise leaning up against my screen there, which is because I have this weird sort of thing that protects the water. It's the only safe place down here to put packages. I found a mystery package. I'm not going to show you the label, but I've got about 3 things that are due coming. A review copy, a preview playtest type thing, and a gift. I think this is the gift, but I'm not sure. I won't open it now, but I'm kind of excited to see something new. Because, you know, I finally made my way down. I got up a little early today, before noon even. I finally made my way down after, you know, my couple hours of fucking around on the video game and dealing with, you know, other shit too. Recruitment shit. Speaking of which, I've got this headhunter, recruiter, whatever, coming after me, who I don't trust one bit. Bad English, asked for a social security number right up front. I didn't give it, but, you know, and I'm like, oh man. First offer was, I don't remember what, like 50% too low, you know? And I'm like, yeah, I'm not interested at that rate. And immediately jumped it up to a level that was what I was sort of asking as my minimum. And I'm like, wow, I don't know. Now, it's pure contract work too, so it's going to be under like a 1099 and all that. And I'm just like, you know, unfortunately, here's the thing, and this is part of why it feels targeted, is like, it's like a code review position. And there aren't little companies that are doing contracting work that want only a code reviewer. So I'm going to be really careful about this one and make sure they kind of prove that they exist. Anyway, I'll get to playing, assuming I don't get distracted by something else like this package. But yeah, it's good news when I find something like this. Expecting things that I'm kind of excited about. Green continues on their little route, whatever they're doing, grabbing tourists or something. They grabbed oil, double oil. Why? Because the speculation value of oil is higher than the other thing I could pick up, which is wheat. Blue moved to Savannah, went to the end of their track. They made their money. They're dropping stuff off in Miami. I'll have a whole handful of cards to decide on that at that point. Although there's things that are looking interesting, like Jacksonville here. I ran through Tampa. So there's a couple of factors that made me pick up the video at this point. One is that kind of, hey, only draw as much track as you're going to need does have its disadvantages. I have enough cash that I could have bought a train upgrade, getting a couple extra movement points each turn. Now, granted, I'm only giving up one turn's worth if that's the case, and maybe I didn't have enough. But instead of doing that, instead of getting some extra speed, I worried about, hey, maintaining my cash just in case I didn't want to go to Miami. But unless there was a disaster, a derailment or something, I was going to Miami, unless I lost my corn. And speaking of which, I ought to pick up, as I've been requested to call it, some backy. Oh, yeah, it's not just Yankees who view my games. Honestly, I think I think I have a higher percentage. It would be great if I could send out like some kind of survey to people about political leanings. I think I have a higher percentage of conservatives who watch me, which is really kind of humorous. Maybe I just, trigger them, and most of the liberals are just like nod, nod, nod. I don't know. But I think my kind of more libertarian views in some ways, some of them, I'm just such a confused person in terms of you can't really shoehorn me into anything because I can't make my own mind up whether there should be, All right. So that's going to get us over to Red, who's doing the wood run. I have one wood. I needed to get another wood, and I was going to run it down south. Okay. So I get my second wood. Now the question here, of course, is, do I want to build track? I don't want to buy a train, and probably can't afford it, but do I want to build track? I'm heading down to Miami, then I have to go to Kansas City, and when I get close, I have to remember to make this link. One of the dangers of leaving things unconnected is, there's some advantage to it in terms of like, you won't get flooded out, but there's some disadvantage to it in that you might forget that you have to connect things. And I view that, making that trade-off as a legitimate game trade-off, not something that, oh shit, I should have built that last turn. No, fuck you, man. You're playing it too close to the edge. I don't know, I'm not that way in most games, and I certainly wouldn't be that way with someone on their first play or whatever, but it's certainly how I treated myself in it is, oh, I fucked up, too bad. I shouldn't have been, I should have built the bridge earlier when I noticed that I shouldn't have delayed that, choice. And chalk it up to, large organizations sometimes fail to act properly. Almost always. They're insane, man. Horrible. The package has me like, so interested in it that I'm having trouble focusing on the game. It's like, oh, squirrel. But I don't want to open it because if I open it, I have to go upstairs. I have to get on the computer. I have to log that I have on 2 different Geeks lists. And all kind of other stuff. And it's like, I just don't want to do all that stuff because I will get further distractions. But my poor little brain is like skimming along like a hamster on a wheel. This is interesting. I guess pulled, I delivered my run to Chicago. Exact spitball. I have a ton of cash. I just drew tourists to San Francisco. Now, my initial plan was bring tourists to Denver, go up, get my cattle that I claimed up in Cheyenne. It cost me $4 or whatever, but got me my claim. And then head back up to Boston. But I can't refuse this, not with this much cash burning in my pocket. Instead of building out to here, though, I'm going to buy myself a fast train. Because I got all this cash. Assuming I can make it, right? I say I have all this cash, 10, 20, 35 should get me from Denver to San Francisco. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 29. It's going to be kind of tight, but yeah. And that gets me out to the West Coast with a nice, sweet track out here that I can go either way from if I need to. I'm close to Atlanta already. I'm close to New York. So maybe I leave Seattle out, but just really nice parsimonious track that cuts through cheap spaces and does what I need. So yes, I am buying that fast freight and start moving a little quicker. I need to exchange my oil. See, one of the options could have been I could get a heavy freight and, play out that that speculation game. But I don't want to do that. I want to go quicker. I got guaranteed runs, Blue with a couple extra pips on the die. Well, on the movement cost. I drew something new. So now I was not sure where I wanted to go with stuff here. I have this Jacksonville wood, and I'm kind of interested in that. But it's a long ways away on, I don't have any of that track yet. But I've drawn stuff that combines with that. Fruit that I'm near here, going up to Toronto. Tobacco to Buffalo, which helps decide me which way to go. But I'm going to be the second person into Buffalo, the third person into Toronto, and the third person trying to build through here. And you can see I'm going to have to go through some more expensive stuff. But it gets me near New York. Right now, I'm kind of connected up. I'm not connected, right? I'm connected. This actually is built. But I'm kind of connected up through here. But I'm close to Chicago. Get all the eastern stuff and worry after that. This guy may actually, because his track is so silly, coming down here, and then down here, I may actually end up making that connection over here to make the big loop, rather than the sort of spider shape. I don't like the big loops as much, but they do have certain efficiencies in them. They're just more expensive to build. $20 gets me up to Buffalo, which is cheaper than I thought it was going to be. Doesn't hook me up to New York yet, but there's plenty of equally bad routes in and out of New York. This is probably the best I can do. I don't know. This maybe they're about equal. But yeah, I've got to compete a lot, and like one of the things this game it really does is in small number of players, there are good routes everywhere. Once you get to that 4-player limit, you're going to start seeing competition like this, where plenty of people are going to a single place. Things like the Japanese nipple rails, played out. A 4-player game of that was really tight. In fact, even 2 players was somewhat competitive, so it was much more interesting for that. Then something like Australian rails, everything is like fucking wide open. There's the deserts, but there's no good way through them. Resist. My lighter ran out of fuel. I had to go up and refill it because I can't live without a pipe burning away. And I'm like, okay, well, I got to do it. And so I opened it up. It was indeed a gift, a Bergie that I don't have and was really interested in. And yeah, somebody offered it, and I'm like, yeah, definitely. Certainly brightens the day a little bit to get something like that. Anyway, back to my chore before I have to get pulled away to do my stupid video game. The more annoying fuck yous. Wildcat Strike. This is one of the harshest cards for the drawer because no matter what, it affects them. Sometimes, you know, it's terrain or whatever. Wildcat Strike. No train may move on the drawing player's rail lines. Drawing player may not build track. This sucks because I need to go to Houston to get my rice. I lose my drawing for this turn, my move for next turn. Had I spent the extra money to draw to Houston, I wouldn't be screwed here. Again, it's the oops. You know, how would I know? And I also won't be able to move the turn after that because I don't have the track here. This is track I was planning on building at the end of this turn, and I can't now. And I actually built it and then had to take it back. And I look at this, and so I've got my Vancouver oats. I don't need that. So I'm looking at Regina and Montreal for rice. And I make it most of the way to both of them. So, you know, I've got a nice card set to make up. Yeah, this extra card was really a bonus to make up for this shit. But, yeah. Green, filling out that spider a little bit more, just shooting another leg out there. And I built the whole $20 worth because I'm going to want to go out here. I got the cash. Screw it. I needed to build some. Maybe I buy another train or whatever. Maybe I change my mind at Denver, but that track is good track. I want to just build it while I can. One of the things is all the cutesy little maneuvers you can do to protect yourself, save a couple bucks here, guarantee yourself something, hold off on making decisions, whatever. All of them come with an opportunity cost, right? You know, every decision you make, and you know, that's like life, but, and like every other game. But it's just very clearly outlined here where it's like, you know, I held off building my track and it cost me another turn. Why did I hold off building my track? A little bit more flexibility. I'm low on money. I don't necessarily need to go to Houston if things don't work out. You know, if another card comes up or something, maybe something much more important will happen. Maybe I need to go to New Orleans, whatever. And had I spent the money, I could be fucked in just as bad or worse a situation. So you're always making these trade-offs and guesses. The complexity, I believe, to get through Buffalo, out of Buffalo to Toronto, I have to come up here, shift down there, that there's only 2 crossings. And this kind of screws Black, but they didn't want that. That's this is one of those cases where you do not want to loop. It's a tight little loop, and it costs a lot. You never want that. In order to understand it, I have to look at this, and you can see there's like 1 dot that you're allowed to cross here. Most of the games aren't as most of them are more clearly defined in terms of like where you can cross things and stuff. There's an easier view to it. This one does not have that. So yeah, I'm gonna want to go to Toronto, Buffalo, and then I need to go up to Portland. Maybe. I'm not sure I want to spend the money on Portland yet. So to do this, I have to go here for 1, 2, 3, 4. This damn crayon. 5, 6, 7, 8. Now, I could just ride someone else. Like I could have built track up for one to red. But you know, the $8 gets me up here, and now I'm in range for Montreal or something. I don't know. I really don't know. Do I want to build that track to Montreal? So that might be the cheaper way to get to Portland. 8, 9, 10, 11. I'm going to stop there because I don't know what other track I want to buy. And that eats up a big hunk of my cash. I'm not going to have the money for a train no matter what, so it's okay. I'll try to clean up that track, but boy, that crayon is shitty. It's the one I always used. With this card, as I discard it, not being able to do anything, and I won't be able to do anything next turn either, is that sometimes it just costs you a turn, right? You know, you're running along this long rail you have, you're heading somewhere, you make a drop off on the way, you draw that card, and oops, that sucks. But because it only affects the drawer's track, other players might be running on it, but it's really kind of targeted on the drawer. It's just, and usually you're delaying decisions until you make a drop off. So this is not an unusual circumstance where you're like, yeah, let me withhold my money. So it's kind of a weird situation. Like sometimes it might not have much effect, but it's very likely to be really, really screwing to the person who draws it and have almost no effect on anyone else. Unless somebody's like running on your rails for a long time, they're probably not too affected by it. They might not be able to get into a city that they wanted to get into, though, which could be problematic. I'm planning on doing Boston Cattle route back home, but I draw kind of a blah card. I mean, there's just nothing exciting about this. Now, if I had drawn this earlier, yeah, I would go and drop wheat at Salt Lake City, and that's not bad. But it's got no big runs, and a card like this could be very useful early in the game. It's got a lot of flexibility, you know, like in your first draw or something. But right now, it's just kind of blah. Okay, so red bounces out of Miami, getting their big money. They have a lot of cash on hand. Their card, again, not a great one. I got this Kansas City wood, right? I got this one. I'm not sure what I want to do with it, but cogs to Billings might not be a bad choice. Billings gets me out here. You know, gotta go out west someday. There isn't anything too great. I guess cows to San Diego is a possibility. This is not a bad card. Again, it's not a blah card like that has no money on it. It's got a medium, kind of high-ish, you know, moderately low, you know. But it just doesn't work for me, you know, not really well. But again, I can do this, and that doesn't sound too terrible. The run from Billings down to Los Angeles is kind of a shame, because I'm going to make all this money going north and then cut south, but it's okay. But it keeps me close to Seattle. Everybody goes to Chicago, so like, this might be a game where red doesn't go to Chicago, but they could so easily. Anyway, do I want to buy a bigger train? I don't feel, well, no. Yeah, I want to see my next card at Kansas City, see what kind of synergy I get out of that. But I'll probably have to build some track out of Kansas City in order to do that. But that track might be going this way first and not this way. So yeah, I don't know what I want to do. Yeah. Finally seeing what's going on finally being able to build track and move for that matter. By the way, it's worse. Like if I hadn't, let's say I had only spent one movement point, I would have lost another turn, right? Another 8 movement points or whatever. So that can kill you too. I'm gonna pick something up, I guess. It doesn't matter. Okay. So seeing that blue was heading off towards Montreal, and I want to go to Montreal with my rice, I immediately jumped in and built there. And again, had blue built all the way to Montreal, that would have made things more expensive for me to make this run. As it is, I already had to cut through a couple of mountains that I would rather not do. It's not worth going bounce, bounce. I mean, I'm going to hit just as many mountains. Obviously, that's not good. But it's generally also not worth curving around bad terrain. A river headwaters might be worth it, but curving around a mountain or whatever, you end up paying the same amount to make worse track. So that was something that I and some other people were stupid enough to do at times. Because sometimes it is a good idea, like avoid a whole range of mountains. But curving around 1 or 2 mountain pieces doesn't make sense. And obviously here, it just wouldn't. So now blue is going to have to work a little bit to get into Montreal in a way that they didn't have to before and spend a little bit extra money, if that's the way they want to go. I don't remember if they do. Like, they built their... It's to get to Portland. Well, this was the cheap route as I saw it, but I'm not sure it is anymore. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. 1, 2, 3. I mean, I have to go to Montreal. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. Comes out about the same. But I was looking at, the advantage of getting me up near Montreal, whatever. I didn't think enough. I'm going to put the dice there. Let me know who's going next. Feeling kind of hungry. Gonna grab some food. And I don't know if I'll be back because damn video game, man. It eats up like between 10 and 16 hours a day on me. One of those instances where I fucked up, and my initial impulse was actually the opposite of what I said. I'm like, oh, come on, because I'm running a 12 train. I'm going to San Francisco. I just forgot to build the track, but screw it, man. I'll move my 9, which gets me there. To the end of the track, and then I'll build the rest of the track there. It's not that big a deal, but it's still kind of that kind of mistake is really easy to make. Not just when you're playing solo. I had enough money to build all this track out, but then I didn't make it, and I forgot that I had to build more. Interesting situation, blues, and again, one of those, hey, how do you want to juggle things? Because I built this stupid track, I'm going to do the obvious and just drop my tobacco off at Buffalo. But it might make sense to go up to Toronto where I'm getting twice as much. Drop that off because I don't have room to handle a disaster if it hits me, like a derailment or whatever. So tobacco, $9. And I lose the card. Between these 3 mechanical actions, it's very hard to get them all right. Now, it's okay when I'm not on video, but when I draw this, and I don't know. Tampa Imports is interesting. It goes with the Jacksonville wood. Means I have to hit Philadelphia for that. So that looks likely. It ought to be a really nice looking run. I grab the wood, the boats, and the tourists from New York and haul them all down to Florida. And, that's going to run me $50, which is close to a cross-continental run. In order to do that, I need to spend 20 on a heavier train. But before I get that heavier train, I need to build my track. Frankly, left me with just enough money to buy the train and to buy the track going into Jacksonville. That's cutting it short. If somebody screws my Jacksonville entry, I'm out of it, because it's the fact that I have $3, but I had to spend 20 to build all that track. Now, I may not care about buying the train early, because I've got a lot of running to do. And that's not visible. Again, I'm going to have to remember the blue crayon doesn't work in this game. It's funny because I played it so much, but I know it was always a little iffier than some of the other colors. It's just not as soft, doesn't print as well. Clean's okay. Members to build their river crossing, but they basically can get to Kansas City 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 exactly. And I'm not absolutely sure that I want to carry my cogs that I picked up to Billings. That's a long run for a combination than the San Diego cattle. It could change, So I want the flexibility for sure there. And I don't want to buy more train, the super freight or whatever. Let's go okay for black at this point. They go down and grab their rice. But immediately I started thinking about, what would have really sucked? If somebody else needed rice and grabbed, a couple of them out of New Orleans, whether they needed 2 or not, at this point, so that I didn't have the 2 rice that my whole plan is. And it was all thrown off by that stupid card. That kind of circumstance does happen as well, too. There's a lot of luck in this game. There's luck in terms of, hey, what do you draw? You have some control over it, which is why the auction versions and I think, I don't remember what the public bonding was. Rick Helly suggested that one to me. Is that in here? Open contracts. It's one of them, which is kind of interesting. Prevents you from, eating up the cards from the pool. Let me see if I have public lock-in. I think that's the one. I don't remember how you lock the card. When you lock a card, in the original variant, when you lock a card, no one could deliver that demand. Yeah, I don't. Just too much to read right now. But another thing that comes out in the luck that's maybe less apparent, but it's the shape of your track, Like I said, green has developed some really nice track throughout this game. I don't know if anybody else is as pretty. It may be just that green's track is more visible than any of the others. Black is obviously, too far north. That's not as good. This is sort of optimal. This sprawling out of Kansas City in all directions. Red's east line, like the west, not as bad as the west line, but the mainly east line beginning. There's a lot of rich stuff there for the early game, but later on, this doesn't do you all that much. And then, you've got long runs up and down instead of this running straight out of KC. Something like for the west, you want to run to the middle here, maybe split both ways if you're going both ways. And again, I've grabbed some of the nice middle terrain. And that's all happened just because of the synergies between the cards that I picked. which is one of the reasons why these things that allow you to grab cards, I'm sure the public locking is a good option of that, are more interesting. But man, they're going to make the game so much more complicated. My brain can't handle this game or has trouble handling this game as it stands. So, gonna do another time or two around, and then that'll be it for the daylight hours, I bet. Because I've gotten in the habit of sitting out on the porch and having a beer and reading as part of my daily routine. Here's where I could have easily fallen into a good run. Los Angeles wheat, like 7 movement points left, and not a lot here. Vancouver wants boats. That's a long way to go for a $14 million run, unless there was something else I wanted to get, especially since I've got the Boston Cattle. This is a shitty card that I just want to get rid of, get it out of my way. New Orleans lead is interesting. That's not a bad run. Unfortunately, it's going the other way from Boston. And this is where, this kind of track is just perfect, right? You might fall into something that works really, really well with the kind of track Red's building, as opposed to with this centralized hub. And, shit happens. If I had the ability to choose between one of these track layouts, I would definitely go for the green. But now I look at this card set and I'm like, well, the red one would have worked better. Hey, ignoring this is the same for either one, because that's what got me out there. So if I wanted to go to New Orleans with that red, I already almost hook it up. And I think it's worth doing. Probably also because if I want to close this card out, which is either going to be Cogs going to Detroit, which is really easy, or almost as easily Oklahoma City needing wheat. I might make a little wheat stop there. So what are we talking about? We're talking about maybe a heavy train, which will allow me to do something kind of freaky. Heavy train, I'm paying $20 to make an $8 run, but remember, I'm considering that $20 as not that bad for the speculation side of the game. Speaking of the speculation side, I'll pick up some sugar. I'll leave that lead on board, although I'm going to run through there. There's no reason for me to do anything with that. I get 7 more moves. And I think my purchase will be for a super chief. Super chief. Oh, it's a super freight in this. Super freight. This train is kind of freighty. I could have stuck around, but I still wouldn't be able to pick something up. And I did not pay for that. That's just another $20. I got tons of cash, and this is going to get me for a run that's kind of all 3, right? Interesting, I dropped off my wood at Kansas City to piles of money. I got a big lot of stuff here. My run could be expanded with a Las Vegas steel run. I'd have to go back to Birmingham to pick up my steel. There's others, but this is the easiest for me to get to. And then I can go up to Billings with my cogs, if I so wish. I don't have. Yeah, I do have to, because I got rid of my cattle. Deliver those, pick up cattle, and I'll have cattle and steel. I won't even need a heavier train to run down to Las Vegas. I thought I was going to need a bigger train for that run. But again, if you can win with just a fast freight, that saves you $20,000 or $20 million. So That's cool. We finish up with black hauling up towards Montreal. Now, I might not have chosen Montreal as my first place, although I think I would because I want to go to Vancouver at the end of the run, so it makes more sense to hit Montreal first. But the race for Montreal that appeared to be happening, that convinced me, yeah, I got to go up there. And so, yeah, this is where we're sitting. We're going to see... I mean, in a sense, there's already two players in the far west. You've got blue out there, but their track doesn't connect. They haven't gone out there again. They spent $4, on black to get a little neat advantage that allowed them to get into the main area of play. And that's one of the problems with starting over on the West Coast, is that you might not be able to make that kind of run back. It's just so unlikely coming through here or even through here that you'll get the kind of richness that you get when you start over here. But your starting cards kind of force you into, you have to follow the synergy they give you, and you might get lucky. So again, luck in that initial draw for base rules only. The problem I have, so when you start talking about these more complicated, let's make the decision making more strategic in concept, where you're not relying as much on luck. The problem I have with that is that I don't like thinking, So like, those are rules and mods that are designed for the people who really like the thinking, the optimization, across the manifold of the track that you have available, the cards that you have available, and all that. They really like that kind of side of it, and they want to increase the player control over that. They want to reduce the luck factor in the game. Well, what don't I like about it? Well, it's just not the way I like to play games, right? I like my games to feel kind of light. I don't want to be spending my time doing a lot of optimization work. Although, honestly, the computer game I'm playing is filled with that kind of shit. But then you look at the mod that I made, or I and my friends, which was this harsh rails thing that just tried to make it worse. Well, that's even more susceptible to luck. I have no problem with luck in a game. What I have a problem with in a game, because I view a game like this as nothing more than a diversion. I don't view it as a real competitive challenge the way I do, say, an 18xx game or some war games, I guess, or Bridge, or Go or whatever. Just because I don't like the kind of competition that's involved in it. I don't like the kind of thinking that's involved in it. But it's a kind of thinking that I think would be appealing to a lot of Euro players. I know that, my friend Tom maybe instead of Fat Tom, I should call him Dead Tom now. We had so many Toms in our group. Basically, not in our direct group. He was the only one that was in our direct group, but we had a lot of Toms we had to refer to. So they all had an adjective associated with them. And Fat Tom is better than Scummy Tom, I gotta tell you. Which was not any comment on himself, although he might have been. Rather, it was a comment on the fact that the one time that I think I played Divine Right, or that our group played it, he had the scum and was really entranced with them. And I don't know. Anyway, all right. I think I'll send this up because I've been babbling a lot.